Today we're going to be talking about commercializing Antiguan Dancehall. We're going to give you some gems, tips, and my overall insight as someone who is actively pushing the culture forward.
Why do you think this is the right time to talk about Antigua Dancehall as a global brand?
Great question. I think dancehall hasn't been as lively as it's been in years, 13 years to be exact. Once Vibes Cartel was free, I think that he put the light back on dancehall, and I think he also is setting the standard for how those within the culture should basically promote and advertise themselves. You know, Vibes Cartel is kind of like a larger than life persona. We've seen how Trinidad has been able to kind of move away from the shadows of soca and broadcast their own dancehall talent. And Antigua has a lot of talent as well. So I think now is the perfect time for us to really just showcase our talent and show that, we can hang. There's a lot of artists, producers, content creators, and even soca and calypso artists from Antigua who, you know, despite the fact that they're super duper talented, the light isn't on them, right? Because we're such a small island. We're just a little dot, but Charlie the Poet is here to highlight that dot and show that, we could hang. So, Antigua to the world.
What does respecting the culture while leveling up the business mean to you personally?
It means a great deal. One of the things that some people from Antigua would say is, don't step away from the essence of our own culture, right? Because we have our own identity. It's called Bena music, a lot of calypso, a lot of soca. But what the supporters have to understand is that things evolve, right? Things elevate. We're living in different times. The kids are listening to different music. And, music is a reflection of life, right? Art imitates life. So the transition in sound is heavily impacted by what's going on in the society today. And I don't think we should condemn the youth for experimenting. I think we should support them because at the end of the day, we're bigging up the island.
Who are some of the OGs that laid the groundwork?
Music, right? You have artists like Baja Dread, Rankin, General P, Old Dance. Those are artists that were in the 70s and 80s who were putting the flag of Antigua on their back, but they just couldn't get that spark. But despite them not getting the spark, those are the shoulders that we stand on today. Those are the artists who were brave enough to say, you know what, I'm going to come out with a different sound. I'm going to put it in front of the world. And in turn, they inspired us because as we came up, we were able to say that, hey, you know what, if they could do it, we could do it. And, we just have more technology out now, more different ways to broadcast and to promote our art. So why not? But definitely big up to the OGs who did it, who set the tone for us for sure.
What made some of those earlier artists and producers special, even when the spotlight wasn't on them?
I think them kind of just having the courage to do it. There are a lot of us who want to try different things. There are a lot of us who want to, chase our dream, not necessarily do, what our parents want us to do, right? Just kind of go to school, go to college, get a good job. There are people who want to do what they love to do, right? But they might be hesitant. They might be scared. So what those artists did was those artists showed that, hey, we don't have to just be local. We could be international. And in order to be international, you have to have that courage and bravery to showcase your talent to the world.
Right. Why do you find it important to recognize the roots before we talk about the future of the genre?
Because, there's a saying that always goes, if you don't learn from history, you're doomed to repeat it, right? You have to know where you're coming from in order to know where you're going. So we cannot allow ourselves to make the same mistakes that were made, right? So I always tell people, do your due diligence. Look at those who have done it before you. See where they may have went right, see where they may have went wrong, and just add your own special flair on top of it.
Who are some of the artists carrying the torch today?
Well, you know, I gotta be biased, man. I'm working with Papa Bigs. I'm working with PG Don. Big up to the A team.
Yeah.
I feel like they're the face of Antiguan dancehall. I feel like there has been no other dancehall artist from Antigua who has put on as much as we put on. Um, and you know, we're not shy with it. You know, we're going into these different spaces. Um, for example, if there's a dancehall party going on and a certain artist is performing, we're there. We're there with music on the flash drive telling the DJ, hey, look, can we open up? Can we perform? You know, we're not scared of that live crowd response. Um, and we're bigging up our island for sure, you know. So definitely Papa Bigs and PG Don are the face of Antiguan dancehall. But we also got to shout out the local talent that's actually in Antigua doing it. Shout out to Nico Wild West. Shout out to Don Reek. Shout out to Don Tiga. It's a lot of artists. It's a lot of artists that are putting out their art and are showing that we can compete with dancehall and even, you know, probably outshine dancehall too. You never know. You know, you never know. I also have to give a big shout out to Hink 45. Hink 45 is a dancehall artist, but his first million views, his first hit song was on a beat produced by an Antiguan producer, G Slicks. So definitely big up to Hink 45 because Hink 45 kind of introduced that Jamaican and Trinidadian audience to Antigua for them to even know that, hey, we also do dancehall too.
How do artists like Papa Biggs and PG Don reflect the new wave you often talk about?
I think it's in the sound. A lot of
Right.
times people say that PG is pop, right? If you listen to PG Don, it's a lot of commercialized type music, commercialized type beats. And Papa Biggs, he has that gritty sound, that gritty flow. You know, he's not scared to experiment on Afro type beats. He's not scared to experiment on trap, drill, rap beats. You know, so they both have their differences, but you know, when you put them all on one track, you know, it creates magic.
And what's different about this generation's approach to visuals, marketing, and branding?
Yeah, well, you know, like I said, we are showing them that we can compete on a professional level, right? So everything that we do has to be in 4K. Everything that we do has to be, you know, it has to be the standard of what industry level music is looking for. So we make sure that we put in a lot of work, effort, and time into what we do, and then when we, you know, when we give the rollout, people see it and people love it.
When did you realize music had to be treated like a business and not just passion?
Right. Good question. Good question. So a lot of, you know, a lot of Antiguan artists, I think where they get it confused is because, you know, we have so much time, and we're so passionate about our craft that we forget that this is a business, right? So you'll have a lot of artists that, you know, they'll just continuously put out music, they'll do this, they'll do that. But, you know, although you love what you do, you also want to be compensated for what you do as well. So the business side of it is very important. Everybody cannot be an artist, right? So if you have a friend who's good in certain things, you know, put them in roles that best suit them because um everybody has to play a part, right?
Yeah.
Everybody has to add value and bring something to the table. So, you know, getting your business savvy is very, 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 very important. I would say we come from an era in dance hall where juggling used to be a thing, right? A lot of different artists on the same beat, but now we've moved from that. So now it's very important for artists to lease their beats, not just download free beats off of YouTube. It's very important to register your BMI so you get paid when your song is being played on the radio. Um, it's very important to network. It's very important to just brand yourself. And then another thing, music has changed, right? So people don't just want to buy into the music, they want to buy into who you are. You yourself are a brand. So you have to be active on social media. You have to communicate. You have to go on these different platforms. Like Shawnee B was saying, you know, before we talk about worldwide dominance, you want to make sure that you're dominating your area, your region, your island. We want to make sure that Antigua is supporting. So, you know, it's very important to go on to different platforms and kind of just expand your sound, tap into different audiences because like Shawnee B had said, you want to create that smoke. And when you create that smoke and you have the upper heads, they're looking back, What's this, who's that. That's when they tap into who you are and goes back into that digital resume. Everything that you put out contributes to your digital resume. So overall, I think is very important, and that's something that we have to tap into more as people who love the culture for dancehall.
You often talk about the importance of having a team. What kind of team do you think an artist needs in order to be successful in 2025?
That's a good question. I'm gonna be very honest. You need more than people who are just going to reshare and listen to your music. You need a group of dedicated people to the cause, because the thing is, right, we all may have different aspirations, but if we all share that same common goal, we can come together to accomplish that. So, I'll take my team, for example, right? The A team. We have the artist, Papa Biggs, PG Don. You got the producer, G Slicks. We're working with Hood Media. Shout out to Vaughn. And then you got Coffee with Charlie, right? So it's podcasting, it's producing, it's music, and it's also event planning. And even though we're all in our own lanes respectively, we can all come together for that one common goal. So I think everybody has to bring something to the table. Everybody has to add value. But I think one of the most important things is there has to be unison within that goal. So if there's a move to be made that Papa Biggs could take and it'll benefit the whole team, let's all contribute to that. If it's a move for Coffee with Charlie that'll benefit the whole team, let's all contribute to that. So having a team is very important, and you're gonna need people who are just as consistent as you are, people who understand what their role is, and people who are dedicated.
Very nice. Can you break down some of the basics that artists need to know, such as royalties, distribution, publishing?
Yeah, for sure. Well, you see, in Antigua and in places in the Caribbean in general, it's so interesting because the islands haven't necessarily caught up to the American standard, right? So not everybody has, first and foremost, monthly phone service, for one. There are still people in the Caribbean who have to, $10 top up, $20 top up. So most of the music in the Caribbean is consumed for free, right? It's either through Audio Mac or it's through YouTube itself. So when it comes to dancehall, dancehall is one of those genres where the first amount of money or the first incentives you're going to see is going to come from either performing or doing dub plates. Dub plate is still a culture that's going on, whereas, a DJ may pay you to, remix your song for him, for his little mix or his little sound system. So, of course, like I stated prior, right, you want to be business savvy. You want to make sure that you register your BMI and publishing and owning your masters and things of that nature. But for the artists that are still there in the Caribbean, I would say just maximize the avenues where people can listen to your music, right? So if Audio Mac and YouTube is the number one thing, then you kind of just want to dominate those spaces. Still make sure your music is registered. If you do have family abroad that can put your music on Spotify, iTunes, so on and so forth, great. But you want to work with what you have and kind of just try to dominate those spaces. So I would say, identify how people are consuming the music and then figure out how you can leverage off of that.
And when it comes to release strategies, what's your take on consistency and timing?
It's so interesting because that's what we struggle with in my team, right? You'd have an artist like Papa Biggs who wants to just drop music consistently, and then you'll have PG who wants to kind of do the slow rollout and time his releases. I would say do whatever works. Do whatever works. For some artists, you have some artists who may record 20 songs who may want to release those 20 songs. If that's what works for you, do that. But for other artists who may want to take their time and promote one song at a time, if that works for you, do that. But consistency is key. And like I stated, the music industry has definitely changed. So you want to make sure that you're always in the face of the consumers because the attention span just isn't there anymore.
You've talked about leveraging attention, right? How can artists use that wisely instead of just chasing the hype?
So leveraging the attention, when I say leverage the attention, I mean like you have to be real with yourself and be real with your analytics, right? So if you have 1,000 people that are watching or 1,000 people that are listening, tap into them, right? Maybe test out something, have your merch created. You can do Patreons, you could do subscription services to give those fans who do want to pay to support, more. So leveraging your attention is you just kind of just got to find your own way to monetize what you do, But of course, you have to identify your supporters, see what they want from you, and then just capitalize on that.
Right. And what's some ways that we can extend the buzz and keep fans engaged in between drops?
Consistency. A lot of dancehall artists are antisocial. You do have to communicate. You do have to network. You do have to go live. You do have to post. And I think Vibes Cartel proved that, right? Vibes Cartel came out, and despite him being gone for like 13 years, he's doing almost every single media platform. Being mystique and antisocial, I don't think is gonna work in today's age. I mean, it could work for some, but ever since Vibes Cartel has been doing what he's been doing, we've seen the trend, right? We got Idonia doing interviews, we got Alkaline doing interviews, we got Chronic Law and Skeng doing skits with content creators. So I think artists are kind of understanding the purpose of tapping into the audiences of others, right? Because, like I said, every platform has value. So, in between those drops, you definitely do want to, network with who you can network with for sure.
Have you seen examples of artists who have fumbled or maximized their moment?
Rest in peace to Gully Bop. Gully Bop was an internet sensation. He was actually a homeless man in Jamaica, but he had a passion for music, and I believe somebody recorded him and it went viral. He got his opportunity. But unfortunately, he also had a lot of health issues, so he couldn't really maintain his success. There was also a lot of controversy with Gully Bop as well. I don't really want to go too much into it, but Gully Bop, I would say, is one of the first artists that comes to mind. And then as far as somebody who's maximized, I would say shout out to Critical. Critical, in my opinion, is the first dancehall artist to actually catch a bus within America ever since Cranium.
Okay.
I think